Jake Morrison stood at the window of his small quarters on the ship, staring at the massive crystal palace below. The building stretched across the horizon like a mountain made of glass and light. He had seen many strange things in his years as a soldier and later as a diplomat, but nothing like this. The planet Thessera Prime was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "You ready for this?" Lisa Grant asked from behind him. She was his second-in-command and one of his oldest friends. They had served together in the military before joining the diplomatic corps. Jake turned to face her. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Did Commander Peters send the final briefing?" Lisa nodded and handed him a data pad. "The Zinthara are not happy we crossed into their space. Even if it was an accident, they see it as an insult. We need to be very careful down there." Jake read through the information quickly. The Zinthara Empire controlled dozens of star systems. They were warriors, proud and strong. Their society followed strict rules that had existed for thousands of years. Making a mistake here could mean war between Earth and this powerful empire. "Let's go meet a queen," Jake said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The shuttle ride down to the palace was smooth but tense. 2 Zintharan ships flew alongside them the entire way, making sure they stayed on the correct path. When they landed, Jake got his first close look at the aliens who might become humanity's enemies or allies. The Zinthara were tall, at least 7 feet on average. Their skin had a slight blue tint that seemed to shimmer in the light. They had 2 arms and 2 legs like humans, but their eyes were larger and completely black. They moved with grace and power, like dancers who were also trained fighters. A group of guards in silver armor met them at the landing pad. "Follow," one of them said in rough English. His voice was deep and cold. They walked through long corridors made of the same crystal as the outside of the palace. Light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Jake noticed that everything was enormous, built for people much taller than humans. He felt small and out of place. Finally, they entered a huge room. It must have been the throne room. Hundreds of Zinthara stood on either side of a long walkway. All of them watched the humans with expressions that Jake could not read. At the far end of the room, on a throne of white crystal, sat Queen Valora. She was younger than Jake had expected. The reports said she had only recently taken the throne after her mother's death. She wore robes of deep purple and silver that seemed to flow like water. A crown of twisted metal sat on her head, but it was her eyes that caught Jake's attention. Unlike the pure black eyes of the other Zinthara, hers had flecks of gold in them. They were intelligent and curious. "Humans," she said, her voice carrying easily across the large room. "You have entered our space without permission. Explain why we should not consider this an act of war." Jake stepped forward, keeping his movements slow and unthreatening. "Your Majesty, I am Jake Morrison, representing Earth and humanity. Our ship's navigation system failed. We did not know we had crossed into your territory until your ships found us. We mean no disrespect or harm. We come only seeking understanding and peace." A murmur went through the crowd. Many of the Zinthara looked angry or dismissive. One tall male near the throne spoke up. "These creatures are primitive. They cannot even control their own ships. Why waste time talking to them?" Queen Valora raised her hand and silence fell immediately. "Tell me, Jake Morrison, what makes humans worthy of my time? What can your small, weak species offer the Zinthara Empire?" It was a test, Jake realized. She wanted to see how he would respond to the insult. He could get angry and defensive, or he could show her something different. "Your Majesty, you are right that we are smaller and physically weaker than your people. We do not have an empire that spans many star systems. But we have something else. We have the ability to adapt and solve problems in new ways. We see challenges differently than others might." "Prove it," the Queen said, leaning forward slightly. A servant brought forward a strange object. It looked like a cube made of many smaller cubes, all twisted together in a complex pattern. "This puzzle has remained unsolved for 3 generations, the Queen explained. "Our greatest minds have tried and failed. If you are so clever, human, solve it." Jake took the puzzle and examined it carefully. It was heavy and cold in his hands. He turned it over, looking at it from every angle. The Zinthara watched in silence, many of them smiling slightly, expecting him to fail. But Jake noticed something. While the Zinthara had tried to solve it through logic and force, the puzzle required a different approach. There were small markings on some of the pieces, barely visible. They were not mathematical symbols or instructions. They were artistic, decorative. He pressed on 3 specific pieces in sequence. following the pattern of the artwork rather than any logical system. The puzzle suddenly unfolded in his hands, transforming into a perfect geometric star. The silence in the throne room was absolute. Even the guards seemed shocked. Queen Valora stood up from her throne, her eyes wide. She walked down the steps toward Jake, something that clearly surprised everyone present. "How did you do that?" she asked softly. "I stopped trying to force it," Jake explained. The puzzle was not about logic or strength. It was about seeing the beauty in the pattern and following where it led. Sometimes the solution is not about thinking harder, but thinking differently. The queen took the solved puzzle from his hands, staring at it in wonder. "Fascinating," she whispered. Then she looked at Jake with those gold-flecked eyes. "You will stay here at the palace while we negotiate the treaty between our peoples. I wish to learn more about how humans think. You interest me, Jake Morrison." Before Jake could respond, the queen turned to her court. "Prepare quarters for our guests. They are under my personal protection. Anyone who harms them will answer to me directly." As the queen walked back to her throne, Lisa leaned close to Jake and whispered, "Well, that went better than expected. But did you see how Lord Kethrin looked at you?" The tall one near the throne. "I think you just made an enemy." Jake had seen. The Lord's expression had been cold with barely controlled anger. But he had also seen something else. When Queen Valora had looked at him while holding the solved puzzle, there had been something in her eyes beyond simple curiosity. Something that made Jake feel both excited and worried about the weeks ahead. 3 weeks had passed since Jake arrived at the Crystal Palace. Each day brought new conversations with Queen Valora. She was hungry to learn about Earth and human culture. They talked about art, music, philosophy, and the way humans organize their societies. Jake found himself looking forward to these meetings more than he should. The Queen's quarters were in the highest tower of the palace. Large windows looked out over the city below. Today, Jake sat across from her at a low table, while she examined a book of human poetry he had brought from the ship. "This concept of love you humans have," Valora said, her finger tracing the words on the page. "It seems chaotic and unpredictable. How do you build a stable society on such uncertain emotions?" Jake smiled. "We don't build society on love alone, but we believe that people should have the choice in who they spend their lives with. Love is not about certainty. It is about finding someone who makes uncertainty worthwhile." Valora looked up from the book, her gold-flecked eyes meeting his. "Choice," she repeated softly. "That word appears often in human writing. You value it highly." "We do," Jake agreed. "We believe that a choice made freely has more meaning than one forced by duty or tradition." The queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the window. "I have no choice in many things, Jake Morrison. In 3 months I will marry Lord Kethrin. It was arranged before I was even born. Our 2 houses must unite to maintain balance in the empire. My feelings do not matter. My duty is to my people." Jake heard the sadness in her voice. He stood and walked to stand beside her at the window, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Does Lord Kethrin love you?" Valora laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Love is not required for a royal marriage among my people. We have something different. When 2 Zinthera are truly meant to be together, they form a mating bond. It is a connection of minds and souls. The bond tells you who your true mate is. But such bonds are rare now. My mother never formed one with my father. Neither did my grandmother. The royal line seems to have lost this gift." "And with Lord Kethrin?" Jake asked quietly. "Nothing," Valora said. "I feel nothing when I am near him. No bond, no connection. But it does not matter. Duty is more important than personal feelings. This is our way." Before Jake could respond, alarms suddenly blared throughout the palace. Valora's personal guards rushed into the room, weapons drawn. One of them shouted something in the Zintheran language. "What's happening?" Jake asked. "Assassins," Valora said, her voice calm despite the danger. "They have breached the tower." The guards surrounded the queen, creating a protective barrier with their bodies. Jake could hear fighting in the corridor outside. The sound of energy weapons and shouting grew closer. "The hidden passage," one guard said to Valora. "We must get you to safety." But Jake was looking at the room differently. He noticed things the Zintheran guards had not seen. The crystal walls were too thick for conventional weapons to penetrate quickly, but there were ventilation shafts. Large ones, big enough for someone to crawl through. "They are not just in the corridor," Jake said urgently. "They are in the walls. The ventilation system." The head guard looked at him with confusion. "Impossible." The shafts are too narrow. For a Zinthara, yes, Jake said. But what if they hired smaller aliens to help them? Or used drones? As if to prove his point, a panel in the wall suddenly exploded outward. A small drone armed with a weapon flew into the room, heading straight for the Queen. The guards were facing the wrong direction, still focused on the door. Jake reacted on instinct. He grabbed a heavy decorative vase from the table and threw it at the drone with all his strength. His aim was perfect. The vase hit the drone and sent it crashing to the floor. A guard destroyed it with a blast from his weapon before it could recover. Check all the ventilation shafts, Jake ordered, falling back into his military training. 3 guards on the door, 2 on the windows, 1 searching the room. Move now! For a moment, the Zintharan guards just stared at this small human giving them orders. Then the head guard nodded sharply and his team moved into position. They found 2 more drones hiding in the shafts and destroyed them before they could attack. The threat was over quickly after that. The assassins in the corridor were captured. It turned out they were members of a rival house that opposed the upcoming marriage between Valora and Catherine. They had hoped to kill the Queen and throw the Empire into chaos. Later, after everything was secure, Valora dismissed her guards and asked Jake to stay. They stood in her quarters, now being repaired from the damage of the attack. You saved my life, Valora said. A human saved the Queen of the Zinthara Empire. My advisors will not believe it when I tell them. Anyone would have done the same, Jake said. No, Valora insisted. My own guards did not see the danger because they were trained to think like Zinthara. They looked for threats that made sense to them. You saw what they missed because you think differently. This is what you meant about solving problems in new ways. She moved closer to him. They were standing very near each other now, closer than was probably appropriate for a queen and a foreign diplomat. Tell me honestly, Jake Morrison. On your world, if you met someone who made you feel like you understood the universe better just by talking to them, what would you do? Jake's heart was beating fast. He knew he should step back, should maintain proper distance, but he could not make himself move. On Earth, if someone makes you feel that way, it means something important. It means they might be special to you. Special, Valora repeated. She reached out and gently touched his hand. The contact sent a shock through both of them. Valora gasped and pulled back. That has never happened before. I felt something. Like electricity, but warmer. Jake felt it too. It was like every nerve in his body had suddenly woken up at once. I don't know what that was, he admitted. I do, Valora whispered, and there was wonder and fear in her voice. It is the beginning of a mating bond. But that is impossible. We are from different species. Different worlds. It cannot happen. But it did, Jake said. They stared at each other in silence, both understanding that something had changed between them, something that could not be unchanged. The door suddenly opened and Lord Kethrin entered without announcement. He was even taller than most Zinthara, with broad shoulders and cold eyes. He looked at Jake with barely hidden contempt, then turned to Valora. I came as soon as I heard about the attack, my queen, he said. His voice made it clear he considered Valora already his property. I'm glad you are safe. I see the human is still here. Perhaps it is time he returned to his ship. His presence is causing too much disruption. Jake stays, Valora said firmly. He saved my life when my own guards failed. He has earned his place here. Catherine's expression darkened. As you wish, my queen. But remember, in 3 months you will be my mate. I will not tolerate inappropriate friendships then. After Catherine left, Jake knew he should go too. But before he could say goodbye, Valora spoke. I am afraid, Jake. Not of assassins or war or ruling an empire. I am afraid of spending my life with someone who makes me feel empty inside when there is another who makes me feel alive. Jake had no answer for her. What could he say? They were from different worlds. She was a queen with duties. He was just a diplomat who had accidentally wandered into something far bigger than himself. But as he walked back to his quarters that night, he could still feel the warmth where she had touched his hand. And he knew, no matter how impossible it was, something real was growing between them. The great celebration hall was filled with thousands of people from across the empire. Every noble house had sent representatives. Diplomats from dozens of alien species were present. Even Commander Peters and the full human delegation had been invited. Tonight was the formal announcement of Queen Valora's upcoming marriage to Lord Kethrin. Jake stood with Lisa near the back of the hall, wearing the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. He tried to focus on the political importance of the event, but his eyes kept finding Valora. She sat on her throne at the front of the hall, looking beautiful and miserable at the same time. "You look like someone going to a funeral instead of a celebration," Lisa whispered to him. "Everyone can see it on your face." "I'm fine," Jake lied. "You are not fine. Neither is she. I have eyes, Jake. I've seen how you two look at each other during those private meetings. This is going to end badly." Before Jake could respond, a Zintharan official called for silence. The ceremony was beginning. Lord Kethrin walked to the front of the hall. He wore armor decorated with the symbols of his house. He looked every bit the powerful warrior lord that tradition required. "Tonight we celebrate the union of two great houses," the official announced. "Queen Valora and Lord Kethrin will be joined in 3 days' time. But first, as is our custom, we invite the honored guest to speak about the nature of partnership and union. We begin with the humans who have traveled far to be here. Jake Morrison, you may speak." Jake felt every eye in the massive hall turn toward him. He had not expected to be called on. Lisa gave him a small push forward. "Go," she whispered. "Say something diplomatic and safe." Jake walked to the front of the hall, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He stopped a respectful distance from the throne and bowed to Queen Valora. When he looked up, their eyes met, and he saw something in her expression. A plea, a hope, maybe even a prayer. He was supposed to say something safe and political. He was supposed to talk about the alliance between Earth and the Zinthara Empire. He was supposed to congratulate the Queen on her upcoming marriage. But he thought about the past weeks. The conversations, the laughter, the way Valora's eyes lit up when she learned something new about humanity, the feeling of her hand touching his, the connection that neither of them could explain but both of them felt. He thought about what she had told him about duty and choice, about spending her life with someone who made her feel empty. And Jake Morrison, diplomat and former soldier, made a decision that would change everything. "On Earth," Jake began, his voice carrying across the silent hall, "we have many different customs about partnership and marriage. But one thing is common across all human cultures. We believe that true partnership cannot be commanded. It cannot be arranged by politics or tradition. The heart does not follow orders." He could feel the tension growing in the room. This was not what they expected to hear. Lord Kethrin was staring at him with open hostility, but Jake continued. "We believe that there is something sacred about choice, about finding the person who makes you want to be better than you are, the person who understands you in ways that nobody else can. We believe that when you find that person, you should hold on to them no matter what obstacles stand in your way. Humans believe that love is not a weakness. It is the greatest strength we have. It gives us a reason to fight, to hope, to build a future worth living in. And when real love exists, denying it does not make it disappear. It only makes everyone involved suffer." Jake looked directly at Queen Valora. "I came to this world as a stranger. I expected to negotiate a treaty and leave. But something unexpected happened. I met someone who changed everything. Someone who made me understand that some connections transcend politics and tradition and even species." The murmuring in the crowd was growing louder. Queen Valora was gripping the arms of her throne so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Your Majesty," Jake said, his voice softer now but still carrying in the acoustics of the hall. "I know my words may offend some people here. I know I am risking the alliance between our peoples. But I cannot stand here and celebrate something that I know will cause suffering. Not when there is another option. Not when the truth is so obvious to anyone who looks." Queen Valora stood up slowly from her throne. The hall fell completely silent. Every person there knew that something unprecedented was happening, but nobody was sure what it was yet. "Jake Morrison," Valora said, and her voice was shaking slightly. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying that duty should not always come before happiness. I am saying that traditions should serve people, not imprison them. I am saying that you deserve to make your own choice about who you spend your life with." Valora walked down the steps from her throne. She moved past Lord Kethrin without even glancing at him. She walked straight to Jake and stopped directly in front of him. They stood facing each other in front of thousands of witnesses. "And if I had a choice," Valora said, her voice gaining strength with each word, "who would I choose? Who is the one that makes me feel like I understand the universe better? Who is the one whose presence makes me want to be the best version of myself?" She reached out and took Jake's hands in hers. The electrical warmth flowed between them again, stronger than before. Several Zinthera in the crowd gasped. They could see the energy, the connection. "It is you," Valora said. "It has been you since the moment you solved that puzzle. Since you saved my life. Since you showed me that thinking differently is not a weakness but a gift. You are my true mate, Jake Morrison. My soul knows it even if my mind struggles to accept it." "Your Majesty," Lord Kethrin said, his voice tight with anger. "You forget yourself. You are bound by tradition, by duty, by the arrangements made before you were born." But Valora did not turn to look at him. She kept her eyes on Jake, and then, in front of her entire court, in front of representatives from across the galaxy, Queen Valora spoke the words that changed everything. "I wish you were my mate." Human. The whole palace fell silent. It was not just quiet. It was the kind of silence that comes when something impossible happens. When the world shifts in a direction nobody expected. Jake knew enough about Zintheran culture to understand what those words meant. By speaking them publicly, Valora had made an official declaration of a true mating bond. It was sacred law among her people. Once spoken, the words could not be taken back. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Then Lord Kethrin spoke, and his voice was cold with fury. "This is an outrage, an insult to every tradition we hold sacred. That human has bewitched our queen somehow, used some Earth technology or trick to create a false bond." "There is no trick," Queen Valora said firmly, finally turning to face him. "The bond is real, I feel it. Everyone in this hall who has the sight can see it. The energy between us is visible to those who know how to look." An elderly Zintheran stepped forward from the crowd. He wore the robes of a high advisor. "Your Majesty speaks the truth," he said. "I can see the bond. It is real, though I have never seen one form between different species before. But our law is clear. A spoken declaration of a true mate bond must be honored." "I challenge this," Lord Kethrin said. "I invoke the ancient right of the trial of worth. Let this human prove he is fit to be consort to a queen. Let him face me in the 3 challenges. If he fails, the queen's words are void and our marriage proceeds as planned." The elderly advisor looked troubled. "The trial of worth has not been invoked in 5 generations, my lord. It is dangerous. People have died during the challenges. Then let the human refuse and admit he is unworthy," Kethrin said. "Or let him accept and prove his worth. Those are the only options our law allows." Every eye in the hall turned to Jake. He could feel Lisa's panicked stare from across the room. Commander Peters looked like he was about to have a heart attack. The alliance between Earth and Zinthara hung in the balance. Jake could refuse and save everything, or accept and risk everything. Jake looked at Valora. She was watching him with hope and fear mixed together in her expression. He thought about what she had said about spending her life feeling empty. He thought about the connection between them that he could not explain but knew was real. "I accept the challenge," Jake said clearly. "I will face the trial of worth." The hall erupted into chaos. Nobles were shouting in anger or approval. Lord Kethrin smiled coldly. Lisa was trying to push through the crowd to reach Jake, probably to tell him he was insane. Commander Peters had his head in his hands. But through all the noise and confusion, Jake kept his eyes on Queen Valora, and she looked at him with an expression of pure gratitude and love that made every risk worthwhile. Jake had 3 days to prepare for the trial of worth. 3 days to train for challenges that had killed Zinthera warriors in the past. 3 days to learn enough about an alien culture to have any chance of survival. Lisa was furious with him. "You have lost your mind," she said, pacing back and forth in his quarters. "Do you understand what you have done? You have put the entire human race at risk. If you die during this trial, Earth and Zinthera could go to war. And for what? For a romance that cannot possibly work?" "It is not just a romance," Jake said quietly. "The bond is real, Lisa, I feel it. And I could not watch her marry someone else when I knew there was another option. The option where you get killed by a 7-foot-tall warrior who has trained his entire life for combat?" Lisa's voice was sharp with worry. "You are a diplomat now, Jake. You left the military behind." "Maybe," Jake said. "But I have not forgotten how to fight. And this trial is not just about strength. There are 3 challenges: combat, wisdom, and sacrifice. I have to hope that being human gives me some kind of advantage." A knock on the door interrupted them. Jake opened it to find an elderly Zinthera standing there. It was General Thuran, the same advisor who had confirmed the reality of Jake's bond with the Queen. "May I enter?" Thorin asked. "I wish to speak with you about the trial." Jake let him in. The old general looked at Lisa and Jake with eyes that had seen many years. "I have come to offer my help," he said. "I believe Queen Valora has found her true mate. I believe tradition should not stand in the way of a genuine bond. And I believe you will need training if you wish to survive Lord Catherine's challenge." "Why would you help me?" Jake asked. "You are risking your position, maybe your life." Thorin smiled sadly. "Because I once had a true mate bond. My beloved died many years ago in battle. I know what it feels like, human. That connection that makes everything else pale in comparison. I will not let politics destroy such a rare gift." For the next 3 days, General Thorin trained Jake in Zintheran combat techniques. The old warrior was patient but demanding. He taught Jake that he could not win through strength alone. Zinthera were too strong, too fast. But they were also predictable because they fought according to ancient forms and traditions. They expect certain moves, certain patterns, Thoran explained. You must use techniques they have never seen. Your human unpredictability is your weapon. Jake also studied with the palace scholars, learning everything he could about Zintheran law, politics, and history. The wisdom challenge would require deep understanding of their culture. He read late into each night, his mind racing to absorb information. But the hardest part was not seeing Valora. Custom demanded they stay apart until the trial was over. He caught glimpses of her sometimes in the hallways, always surrounded by advisors and guards. Once their eyes met across a courtyard, and the longing in her expression nearly broke his heart. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. The entire palace gathered in the great arena. Thousands of Zinthara filled the seats. Every noble house was represented. The human delegation sat together, looking terrified. Commander Peters had tried one last time that morning to convince Jake to withdraw, but Jake had refused. Lord Catherine stood in the center of the arena, wearing full combat armor. He looked confident and dangerous. Queen Valora sat in the royal box, her face carefully neutral but her hands gripping the railing tightly. The High Judge, an ancient Zinthara who served as keeper of the law, stepped forward to explain the rules. The trial of worth consists of 3 challenges. First, combat. The challenger must prove he can protect the queen. Second, wisdom. The challenger must prove he can guide the empire. Third, sacrifice. The challenger must prove he values the queen's well-being above his own desires. Begin. The combat challenge started immediately. Lord Catherine drew his weapon, a long blade that crackled with energy. Jake had been allowed to choose his own weapons. He had selected 2 short fighting sticks, weapons he had trained with in his military days. Catherine attacked first, moving with incredible speed. His blade whistled through the air where Jake's head had been a moment before. Jake rolled away, using his smaller size to his advantage. The Zintheran lord was strong and fast, but Jake had studied his patterns. The fight went on for what felt like hours. Jake dodged and blocked, waiting for his moment. He took several glancing blows that would have been fatal if his armor had not absorbed the impact. But he was learning Catherine's rhythm, seeing the predictable patterns General Thoran had warned him about. Finally, Jake saw his opening. Catherine made a powerful overhead strike, a traditional Zintharan attack that committed the warrior fully. Instead of blocking or dodging, Jake did something no Zintheran would expect. He dropped his fighting sticks and dove forward, sliding between Catherine's legs. As he passed beneath the surprised warrior, Jake grabbed Catherine's ankle and pulled hard. The mighty Lord Catherine crashed to the ground. Before he could recover, Jake had one fighting stick pressed against his throat. The fight was over. Jake had won not through strength but through completely unexpected tactics. The crowd was silent with shock. Then slowly they began to applaud. Even some of Catherine's own supporters seemed impressed. Jake helped the lord to his feet. Catherine looked at him with a mixture of anger and grudging respect. "You fight like no warrior I have ever faced," Catherine admitted. "You have passed the first challenge." The wisdom challenge came next. The High Judge presented a scenario. A border dispute between 2 vassal houses threatened to erupt into violence. Resources were scarce in the contested region. Both houses had valid historical claims. How would Jake resolve it? Many expected a long political answer full of compromises. But Jake thought about what he had learned. He thought about human solutions to similar problems. He thought about what Valora had taught him about the Zinthara people. The dispute exists because both houses see resources as limited, Jake said. But what if the resources could be expanded? "On Earth, when we face scarcity, we innovate," We find new ways to create abundance. I would propose a joint venture. Both houses work together to develop new technology for resource extraction and production. Instead of fighting over what exists, they create more. The border becomes not a line of division, but a center of cooperation. Both houses profit. The empire grows stronger. The High Judge was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. A solution that benefits all parties. One that uses conflict as an opportunity for growth rather than destruction. The challenger has shown wisdom beyond simply following tradition. He has passed the second challenge. Now came the final test. The sacrifice challenge. The High Judge looked at Jake seriously. For this challenge, you must prove that you place the Queen's well-being above your own desires. Lord Kethrin, as the challenged party, may ask you to make any sacrifice he chooses. Choose wisely, my lord, for the law will hold you to fairness. Lord Kethrin smiled coldly. He looked at Queen Valora, then at Jake. My demand is simple. To prove you truly care for the Queen's well-being and not just your own desires, you must leave. Forever. Return to Earth and never contact Queen Valora again. If you truly love her, you will see that your presence has brought nothing but chaos to the Empire. You will leave to give her peace. It was a brilliant move. If Jake agreed, he lost Valora but proved he loved her selflessly. If he refused, he failed the trial and proved he was selfish. Either way, Kethrin won. The arena was completely silent. Everyone watched Jake, waiting to see what he would do. Jake looked up at Valora. She was crying silently, tears running down her face. She shook her head slightly as if begging him not to accept. But Jake thought about what love really meant. He thought about what Valora had taught him about sacrifice and duty. And he realized what he had to do. I accept, Jake said clearly. If my leaving will bring peace to the Queen and the Empire, then I will go. I will return to Earth and never contact her again. I love Queen Valora enough to give up my own happiness for hers. Valora stood up in the royal box, her hands over her mouth. The crowd erupted into shocked whispers. Lord Kethrin looked triumphant, but General Thorne was smiling. The old warrior stepped forward. The challenger has proven his love through the ultimate sacrifice. He is willing to give up everything for the Queen's sake. But the law of the trial is clear. The challenge must be fair. Lord Kethrin, you have asked for a sacrifice that benefits only yourself, not the Queen. You have demanded the human leave, but consider, does this truly serve the Queen's well-being? The High Judge nodded slowly. General Thorne speaks truth. The sacrifice challenge requires the act to serve the Queen's best interests, not the challenger's revenge. Lord Kethrin, would you deny that Queen Valora has formed a true mate bond with this human? Kethrin's expression darkened. I do not deny it. I can see the bond as clearly as anyone, but that does not mean it should be honored. If the bond is real, then separating them would cause the Queen great suffering, the High Judge said. Therefore, your demand fails the test of fairness. However, the human's willingness to accept such a sacrifice proves his love is genuine. He has passed all 3 challenges. The trial of worth is complete. Jake Morrison has proven himself worthy. The crowd went wild with cheering and shouting, half celebrated while half protested. But the law was clear. Jake had won. The High Council met for 7 days straight. The palace was filled with tension as the most powerful members of Zintharan society debated the unprecedented situation. A human had passed the trial of worth. A human had proven a true mate bond with their queen. But could they actually allow this union to happen? Jake was not allowed to attend the council meetings. He spent the time in his quarters trying not to think about everything that could go wrong. Lisa visited him daily with updates she gathered from various sources. Half the council wants to honor the trial results, she told him on the 4th day. The other half says allowing a human to become royal consort would weaken the Empire's image. Some are even talking about deposing Valora and putting her cousin on the throne instead. And Valora? Jake asked. Lisa smiled slightly. She is fighting for you. She stands before the council every day and argues that tradition should not be more important than truth. That a real mate bond is sacred above all other laws. She is stronger than anyone expected, Jake. She is not backing down. On the 7th day, Jake was finally summoned to the council chamber. He walked through the long hallways of the palace, flanked by guards. When the great doors opened, he found himself facing dozens of elderly Zinthara seated in a circle. Queen Valora sat at the head of the circle, her face tired but determined. The eldest council member, a woman named Elder Nira, spoke first. Jake Morrison of Earth, we have debated your situation for many days. We have consulted the ancient texts. We have examined the laws and traditions that have guided us for thousands of years. We have reached a decision. Jake stood straight, preparing himself for whatever came next. Elder Nira continued. The ancient texts speak of the true mate bond. They describe it as the most sacred connection two beings can share. They say that such a bond transcends houses, ranks, and even species. We found records from over 2,000 years ago of a Zintheran, who bonded with an alien from another world. It is rare, but it has happened before. Hope began to build in Jake's chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Elder Nira was not finished. However, we also found something more important. We discovered that the royal bloodline has been weakening for generations. True mate bonds have become increasingly rare among our nobility. Some scholars believe our people are losing the ability to form such bonds entirely. This has been a source of great concern. Another council member, an elderly male, spoke up. Your bond with Queen Valora may be the strongest mate bond any of us have seen in several generations. The energy between you is visible even to those with weak sight. Some of our wisest scholars believe that mixing your human bloodline with the royal line could actually strengthen it, could bring back the gift of bonding that we have been losing. Jake felt dizzy. They were not just talking about accepting him. They were talking about him as a way to save their species. Elder Nira stood up slowly. We have voted. The decision is not unanimous, but it is clear. We recognize the true mate bond between Queen Valora and Jake Morrison. We acknowledge that Jake has passed the trial of worth, and we grant permission for their formal bonding ceremony. The chamber erupted into a mixture of cheers and angry protests. But the decision was made. Jake looked at Valora and saw tears of joy running down her face. She stood and walked to him, not caring about protocol anymore. They embraced in front of the entire council. I thought I had lost you, Valora whispered against his chest. Never, Jake promised. I will never leave you. The next week was a whirlwind of preparation. A special ceremony had to be created, one that honored both Zintharan and human traditions. Jake worked with Lisa and Commander Peters to incorporate elements from Earth, while the palace scholars included all the sacred Zintharan rituals. Lord Kethrin surprised everyone by requesting a private meeting with Jake. 2 days before the ceremony, they met in one of the palace gardens far from listening ears. I came to apologize, Kethrin said stiffly, and to acknowledge that you are worthy of the Queen. You defeated me fairly in combat. Your wisdom in the second challenge showed me that humans have much to teach us, and your willingness to sacrifice everything in the final challenge proved your love is genuine. Jake extended his hand in the human gesture of peace. After a moment, Kethrin took it. I also came to pledge my house's support, Kethrin continued. You will need allies in the court. There are still many who oppose this union. I will stand with you and the Queen. Why? Jake asked. I took away the marriage you were promised, Kethrin smiled sadly. Because I never wanted a loveless political marriage either. I wanted what you have found. I wanted a true bond. If I cannot have it myself, at least I can honor it when I see it in others. The bonding ceremony took place in the grand hall where Jake had first met Queen Valora. But this time the atmosphere was completely different. The hall was decorated with flowers from both Earth and Thessera Prime, human music mixed with Zintheran harmonics. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, understanding they were witnessing a historic moment. Jake wore a combination of human formal wear and Zintheran royal robes. Valora wore a dress that seemed to be made of starlight itself. When she walked toward him down the long aisle, Jake felt his breath catch. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The ceremony included vows from both cultures. They exchanged symbols of commitment, a ring from Earth, a crystal pendant from Zinthera. When the moment came to complete the mate bond, Valora took Jake's hands and they stood facing each other. In front of all these witnesses, Valora said, I claim you as my true mate. I bind my soul to yours for all the days we have together. I choose you, Jake Morrison, not out of duty or tradition, but out of love. I accept your claim. Jake replied, speaking the Zintheran ritual words. I bind my soul to yours. I choose you, Valora, for all the days we have together. My heart, my loyalty, my life all belong to you. The bond between them suddenly blazed with visible light. Everyone in the hall could see it. A connection of pure energy flowing between them. It was beautiful and powerful, Several people in the crowd gasped at the intensity of it. General Thorin, who was officiating the ceremony, smiled widely. The bond is complete. The joining is witnessed. Queen Valora and Jake Morrison are now true mates in the eyes of the law and the universe itself. The celebration that followed lasted 3 days. Humans and Zinthara mingled together in ways that would have been unthinkable weeks before. Lisa got slightly drunk on Zintharan wine and told Jake she forgave him for being an idiot. Commander Peters admitted that maybe sometimes following your heart was just as important as following orders. But the real impact of the bonding went far beyond one celebration. Over the following months, the alliance between Earth and the Zinthara Empire grew stronger. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchange programs were established. Young humans came to study in Zintharan schools while Zinthara scholars visited Earth. Jake became not just a royal consort, but also an official ambassador between the two civilizations. He worked with Valora to build a new kind of empire, one that valued cooperation over domination. His human perspective helped solve problems that had plagued the Zinthara for generations. The bond between them grew deeper with each passing day. Valora taught Jake about the history and beauty of her people. Jake showed her Earth through countless holographic images and stories. They learned each other's languages. They shared their hopes and fears. They built a partnership that was stronger than either of them alone. 6 months after the bonding ceremony, Jake stood with Valora on the palace balcony, looking up at the night sky. Earth's star was visible in the distance, just a tiny point of light among billions. "Do you ever regret it?" Valora asked softly. "Leaving your world behind? You can never truly go home again." "Your life is here now with me." Jake pulled her close. "Earth will always be where I came from," he said. "But home is not a place. Home is the person who makes you feel like you belong. You are my home now, Valora, and I would make the same choice 1,000 times a shooting star crossed the sky above them." Valora pointed at it. "On your world, what do humans do when they see such a thing?" "We make a wish," Jake said. "Then I wish for what we have built here to grow," Valora said. "I wish for more bridges between worlds, for more understanding, for a future where love and choice matter more than ancient rules." Jake smiled. "I think we are already making that wish come true far below them." In the streets of the capital city, humans and Zinthara walked together. Children from both species played in the parks. Ships from Earth docked beside Zintharan vessels at the spaceport. A new age had begun, not because of war or conquest, but because two people from different worlds had found each other and refused to let anything keep them apart. General Thoran watched from another balcony and smiled. He had lived to see something he thought was impossible, a true mate bond that crossed the stars, and more than that, he had lived to see it change the Empire for the better. In the human quarters, Lisa was writing a report back to Earth. She paused and looked at what she had written. Then she deleted the formal language and started over with something more honest. "The mission was a success beyond anything we could have imagined," she wrote. "We came seeking a political alliance. We found something much more valuable. We found proof that connection and understanding can